The sound of joy. The grandfather clock in the marble foyer chimed 3 times, its deep voice echoing through the empty corridors of the Blackwood mansion. William Blackwood adjusted his silk tie as he stepped through the front door, his leather shoes clicking against the polished floor. The house felt different today, quieter somehow, though he couldn't quite place why. For the past 5 years, since the accident that had taken his wife and left his daughter Emma unable to walk, silence had become his closest companion. The sprawling estate that had once buzzed with dinner parties and children's laughter now felt more like a beautiful tomb, preserved but lifeless. William loosened his tie and headed toward his study, briefcase in hand. Another day of board meetings and financial reports had drained him, leaving behind the familiar weight of exhaustion that seemed to grow heavier each month. He paused at the bottom of the grand staircase, his hand resting on the carved banister. Above him, something unusual drifted down from the second floor, a sound he hadn't heard in far too long. Laughter. Pure, delighted laughter that seemed to dance through the air like music. His breath caught in his throat. Emma's laughter. William set his briefcase down carefully, as if any sudden movement might shatter whatever magic was happening upstairs. The sound came again, bright and clear, followed by another voice. Sarah, the young woman he'd hired 6 months ago to care for Emma. Step by step, William climbed the staircase, each footfall measured and deliberate. The sounds grew clearer as he approached the second floor. There was music playing, something light and cheerful, and beneath it, the soft shuffle of movement. 1, 2, 3, that's perfect, Emma. You're such a wonderful dancer. William's heart began to race. Dancing. Emma hadn't shown interest in anything beyond her books and art supplies since the accident. He'd tried everything. The best doctors, the most expensive therapies, every specialist money could buy. But Emma had retreated into herself, speaking only when necessary, her bright spirit dimmed like a candle in the wind. He reached the landing and moved silently toward Emma's room, the door slightly ajar. What he saw through the gap stopped him completely. There, in the center of the pink-walled bedroom, was Sarah, blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing her simple blue dress with the white apron. She was kneeling on the hardwood floor, her hands gently holding Emma's as his daughter stood supported by her bright blue crutches. But Emma wasn't just standing. She was moving, slow, careful steps that barely lifted from the floor, but steps nonetheless. Her white dress swayed gently with each movement, the purple bow in her curly hair catching the afternoon light streaming through the tall windows. And on her face, oh, the expression on her face, was pure joy. Am I really dancing, Sarah? Emma's voice was breathless with wonder. You absolutely are, sweetheart. You're the most graceful dancer I've ever seen. Sarah's voice was warm, encouraging, filled with genuine affection. William pressed himself against the wall, afraid to breathe, afraid to disturb this precious moment. His throat tightened as he watched Sarah patiently guide Emma through simple movements, celebrating each small step as if it were a grand pirouette. My daddy used to dance with Mommy, Emma said softly, pausing in their gentle swaying. I remember watching them at parties. They looked so happy. I bet they were beautiful dancers, Sarah replied, adjusting Emma's grip on T-crutches. Would you like to show your daddy what you've learned? Emma's face fell slightly. Daddy doesn't have time for dancing. He's always working, always sad. I think he doesn't like being around me since the accident. The words hit William like a physical blow. He closed his eyes, pain washing over him. Had he really made his daughter feel unwanted? In his grief and guilt, had he pushed away the one person who mattered most? Oh, Emma, Sarah said gently, I think your daddy loves you more than all the stars in the sky. Sometimes grown-ups don't know how to show their feelings when they're hurting inside. Do you really think so? I know so. Why don't we practice a little more? Maybe someday you can surprise him. William watched as they resumed their gentle dance, Sarah's patience and Emma's determination creating something beautiful in the golden afternoon light. The wheelchair sat empty in the corner, decorated with a white feather boa, a prop from their imaginative play. For months, William had hired therapist after therapist, each one focused on clinical exercises and medical goals. But here was Sarah, a young woman with no fancy degrees, giving Emma something none of the specialists had thought to provide: joy. Pure, simple joy. As they moved together, Emma's confidence grew. Her steps became steadier, her smile brighter. Sarah began to hum along with the music, and Emma joined in, her sweet voice filling the room with melody. William felt tears he'd held back for 5 years finally begin to fall. When had he stopped seeing his daughter's strength and started seeing only her limitations? When had he forgotten that Emma was still the same bright, loving child she'd always been? The song ended, and Emma clapped her hands with delight. That was the best dance ever. You were wonderful, Sarah said, helping Emma settle back into her wheelchair. Absolutely wonderful. William knew he couldn't hide any longer. He knocked softly on the door frame, pushing it open. Both Emma and Sarah turned, startled. Daddy. Emma's face lit up, then quickly became uncertain. I was just. You were dancing, William said, his voice thick with emotion. He stepped into the room, his eyes moving between his daughter and the young woman who had brought her back to life. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Emma's eyes widened. You saw us. Are you angry? William crossed the room and knelt beside her wheelchair, taking her small hands in his larger ones. Angry? Oh, sweetheart, I'm not angry. I'm amazed. And I'm sorry. Sorry for what, Daddy? For forgetting that you're still my brilliant, wonderful Emma. For thinking that anything at all, could change how much I love you. He looked up at Sarah, who was quietly wiping her own eyes. And grateful, so very grateful to Sarah for reminding us both that there are many ways to dance. Emma threw her arms around his neck, and William held her close, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair. Over her shoulder, he met Sarah's eyes and mouthed a silent, "Thank you, Daddy." Emma pulled back to look at him. Would you like to dance with us? William smiled, the first real smile he'd felt in years. I would love nothing more. As Sarah put on another song, William took his daughter's hands while she remained in her chair, and together they swayed to the music. The afternoon sun painted everything golden, and for the first time since the accident, the Blackwood mansion was filled with the sound it needed most. The sound of joy.